Hello and happy Thursday. I'm Dianna Kennedy, and I'm once again representing the iHomeschool network for another one of our weekly iHomeschool Hangouts. You'll find us here each and every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 Mountain Time, and 11 a.m. for our folks on the Pacific Coast. You can follow us on YouTube. You can circle us on Google+. And a new venture that we just launched recently that we're very excited about is actually being able to follow us on iTunes or on Stitcher for you folks that are Android users. And we have a majority of our Hangouts recorded as podcasts as well, so you can follow us there. But I'm not representing the iHomeschool network. You can find me at the Kennedy Adventures, where I talk about Catholic homeschooling resources, living my faith, and managing a large family, as well as my misadventures in homeschooling. Today, I am very pleased to announce that we're going to be talking about teaching writing. This is a special hangout for us. We're going to be working very closely together with Lily from Fortuagents, and I've got some great folks here on the panel. We're going to talk about teaching writing, how to encourage reluctant writers, how to teach writing to kids at all. That's kind of a big topic to cover. So we're going to get started. I'll ask my girls on the panel to introduce themselves. We're going to start out with Heidi.
Hey there, Heidi here from startsaat8.com. That's where you can find me blogging. I also am a member of the Hip Homeschool Moms team, where I help out with social media. I contribute monthly to articles written there, and I'm happy to be here.
If you follow us along, Heidi's a frequent guest on our panel. Jimmie?
Hi everybody, I'm Jimmie Lanley, and you can find my homeschool blog at jimmiescollage.com. And I love teaching writing. It's one of my favorite things to do, so I'm really excited about the topic today.
Excellent. We're going to move on down the line to Kirsten.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Torrado, and I blog at kirstenjoyawake.com. And I write about homeschooling and also about helping women into their life purpose. I'm married to an amazing man for 13 years, college sweethearts. We have 2 sons who are in elementary school. They're 9 and 7. So I'm really excited about today's topic, too.
Thanks for being here with us today, Kirsten.
Thanks for having me. Yes.
Lily?
Hi, my name's Lily Iatrides, and I'm the founder of Fortuagents, which is an online school where we're starting out teaching writing programs to help kids develop their writing skills so they can really go out into the world and be successful with all of their writing that they have to do in the workplace. So we want to make sure they're really set to go there. Anyway, our first program is an Essay Rockstar writing program, and there's a series of courses with that. And we're located at fortuagents.com. That's FORTUIGNCE.com. Thanks. Okay.
We're thrilled to have Lily here on the panel with us today. She's going to be our expert talking about some of the Fortuagents products that she has to offer. We're actually going to have, I think, Heidi be able to pop in with some of the ways that she uses Fortuagents in her homeschool, and Lily will be able to offer us some advice for some of the hurdles or pitfalls that we may come up against as homeschooling moms teaching writing to our kids. Marlene?
Hi everyone, I'm Marlene Griffith. I blog over at adiligent.heart.com about homeschooling, family life, kids, marriage, a little bit of everything, and I will be here to pull your comments through. So we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
Excellent. Marlene's my right hand girl during these hangouts. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that she helps to run very smoothly, so you guys have a good experience on your end. Renee?
Hi, I'm Renee, and I blog at greatpeaceacademy.com. I blog about my homeschooling my only child, Jonathan, you're so in most
We're having some tech issues with Renee, so I'm going to ask her to step out and just kind of hang out in the event room and help to submit questions through there, and then we'll actually pull her comments in with Marlene so that she can give some input. I know we were going to discuss how to raise and work with reluctant writers. So sometimes, like I said, in the Hangouts we have some technical issues that we just can't overcome. So we're going to move on with that. Let's talk about first and foremost. Let's talk about let's start there actually with raising or encouraging a reluctant or struggling writer. I'm sure that Renee is not the only person who's had this issue come up before. If you've got, like, for me, I've been. Part of the reason that I blog is because I love to write, and that's something that I've loved since I was young. So to me, writing is a natural process, and I think I've gotten a little bit better at it as I've gotten a little older. So, but it may not come easily to other people. So I would love to hear from the panel and from Lily about their experiences with reluctant writers. How do you approach that? How do you encourage reluctant writers without totally throwing them off the boat and frustrating them? And how do you not get frustrated as well? So I would love to have somebody start pitching in and doing that too.
I'll jump in there and share a few things. I think one of the important things you need to do if you have a reluctant writer is try to identify exactly what is the frustration. Because writing is so multifaceted, and if the kid just says, I hate writing, that doesn't really help you understand what it is about writing. For some children, it's the actual handwriting, it's the pen to paper aspect. For some children, it's the actual thinking process. So it really depends, and I think if you can narrow in on exactly what is frustrating you about it, then maybe you can solve that problem while you keep the other aspects. So that'd be my first tip.
Hey, and Jimmie, if I can join in on top of that, I agree exactly. That's exactly what I would have said first thing as well. But after that, there's a couple of things you can do to just make it as easy as possible for the kids. And two things that I usually do at the start is to either, one, first make them not have to worry about grammar, spelling, punctuation at all, and just get there's some thoughts down on paper, and then also give them just a limit of how many lines. Like even if it's just 3 lines, that's it. Depending on each kid, how much they start to resist that, and you can feel that out. But keep it real simple and real easy. Just have them put a few ideas or thoughts down either on the screen or on paper. That's fine.
Along the lines of Jimmie's comment about pen to paper, with our oldest daughter, we found that while she was a perfectly good handwriter and didn't mind writing other aspects, when it came to putting longer thoughts on paper for an actual written paper, she much prefers to type. And the other reason she does prefer to type is because then the rewrites are quicker. She used to get frustrated with writing, then scribbling, writing corrections, and then having to rewrite the paper all over again neatly. And so for her, using the computer makes the corrections really, really easy. She goes in, punches a couple of buttons, adds a few lines, and that has actually decreased the frustration for her.
That's really good, Heidi. I know with my 2 boys, I experience their frustration around having to write and then erase and rewrite, and it's really hard, especially when they're just emerging and developing their fine motor skills. I know having 2 boys, when you get that immediate, that sigh of, oh, we have to do this, and I like what Jimmie said about identifying where the struggle might be. I know in our writing, in our homeschool, we really focus on a 2-part process. which is first forming the words around the idea. So starting with that idea and forming an idea in your mind, and then putting that abstract idea into words, which is a whole process within itself. And then holding those words in your mind long enough to get it down on paper, because we'll do this, they'll maybe say to me first what they want to write. But then if I ask them, okay, now write it down, and they'll say, what did I say? And you know, it's like they forgot it as soon as they said it. So I think sometimes in the process of writing, we can help identify where in the process our kids are stumbling. Are they having a hard time holding it in their mind? Or if you have a really abstract thinker, my 9-year-old is a super creative kid, and he loves to draw, you know, and so he thinks in terms of pictures and not necessarily in terms of words. So that process of getting that picture put into words is, we take our time around that process. So I think identifying where that struggle is really helpful to implementing some strategies.
And I have a tool that I've used myself as a writer, and it's actually an app on my iPhone, a free app called Dragon. You guys might have seen some of the TV commercials for the dictation software. It's a free app called Dragon, and you talk into it, and then you can email it to yourself, I think, or copy and paste it. But anyway, it has text. Now it's, you know, it's got problems. It's not perfect, but it's a start. And so I think for a kid who really despised putting the pen to paper, it would be a great way of just getting those ideas captured, like you were saying, Kirsten. You could also record it. You could just do a voice recording, and you can have that on your smartphone too. So, you know, kids usually like technology, and I think if you can give them those little tools and say, okay, your assignment is to record your thoughts here, they get a little more motivated.
That's a really good idea. I like that. That's the Dragon app? Okay, I'm going to have to write that down.
I'll bet we can share it probably over the event room as a link. I'm glad that we talked about dictation, because I have boys and girls in my house. But mine are still little, so we're not quite up to Lily's programs yet. Like, I'm not teaching my kids writing terms I don't even remember. All I can recall is, like, you know, persuasive writing. But in our house, like, Rachel loves to write. I mean, she could sit down. She was making up stories when she was little. Like, there's a book that we have, The Purple Princess, that she wrote when she was 3. She dictated the story to my husband. My husband then wrote the story out for her, and then they created pictures together and then went through a program and created an actual hardbound book. So we have an actual book that she's written and that she's so very proud of. So that might be something that you might want to think about with your kids, kind of like, okay, well, you just tell me the story, and we're going to make this a book, kind of work together on the project. And then going against my type A, it's hard for me because my boys hate to physically write, but there's, like I said, once again, they're still little. Taking a relaxed approach to this, I think, is key, because if you get it's like anything else. I think if you get ramped up about it and you're stressed out, I think that kind of falls over onto them too. So that's one of the things that we look at. Just kind of lay off of it a little bit. You know, don't go at it like you're killing snakes. Just be a little bit more relaxed.
I think that's good advice, Dianna. I think sometimes we get so focused on getting that product, you know, getting those sentences out, getting that paragraph down, that we kind of really put too much stress on the process. I think especially when they're young, we ought to focus on developing skills and developing process and laying that foundation so that when they do get older, I know Lily talks about with Fortuagents about having high schoolers and secondary age children who are struggling with just the basic skills of writing. So I think when they're young, if we focus on that process and that skill, even if the product isn't what we wanted, it's okay.
Yeah, remember, it's a long-term investment that you're doing over the course of 10, 12 years to teach them. So you've got a long time to get them where you need them to be. So that's fine. And I've found a lot that the tone that you use with the kids that really impacts their attitude toward the activity. So if you can just keep it light and not get too stressed or tense or feel unpleasant, like if you don't feel dread toward it, maybe it'll help diminish theirs as well. Like you don't want to get in a negative cycle with it.
I totally agree with that one. This is not about handwriting, but my focus was handwriting with my little ones because they were just not getting it. Their pencil grip was horrible. They hated to write. They cried every time I said, "Let's work on letters." I left it alone, and now I'm finding Mom written all over everything, or just like random letters, and the boys will come to me and go, "What's this spell?" Doesn't spell anything per se, but hey, I'm glad you're writing finally, because I left it alone, and I quit getting so stressed about it. And like my friends would say, they're not going to be 12 and not writing. Just calm down and relax.
Diana, I have a story I wanted to share. I was at a homeschool conference once, and a mom was talking about how her son didn't like to write, and she felt like a failure, and how could she motivate him, and on and on. And, he just didn't want to write his essay, and he struggled with writing essays. And finally I said, "Well, what grade is your son in?" And he was in 2nd grade. And I was just blown away, and I thought, that's not age appropriate. No wonder Lily's face. I mean, she's just in pain right now.
Oh, poor little boy.
I know. You're just setting that boy up for failure. I mean, a 2nd grader is writing sentences, not an essay. And so I think being grade appropriate is critical to the success of teaching your children how to write.
Yeah. And sometimes, honestly, some of the kids I'm seeing that are teenagers, they're struggling with the paragraph. So, you're fine if you're getting them writing in elementary school and doing their sentences,
I definitely worry about that with my teenager. I'm wondering if her papers are long enough, if that's really a judge of writing or not. But as she's working through papers, I've often tried to search and wonder, what, Lily, do you think would be appropriate at a early high school level in general for the length of a paper?
Well, it really depends on what the assignment is. I mean, sometimes kids that are really great at being concise and clear and answering and responding fully in just a few sentences and a few paragraphs. It really depends on the style of the kid's writing. I mean, I think what's more important, sometimes there's a writing limit given, do this many words, and then you have to add in more. But more, I look at the content. Have they fully answered the question? Is there any extra outside research that they could or should be doing? It really depends on what the assignment calls for.
Could you address that, Lily? Just because I want to know for myself, but I'm hoping that the people in the event room might have the same question too. Like, kind of take us through, like, what's a normal timeline for developing writers? Like, okay, in 2nd grade, your focus should be blah blah. Sentence structure or whatever, by this point, kind of gradually move them up, because I have no idea. I mean, 'cause mine are all still little, but that might be a good resource for folks that are watching and listening. It's kind of like, where should you be kind of at this point?
Okay, sure. Like I'd say around first grade, they're just learning how to write. 2nd grade and 3rd grade maybe short, some paragraphs, writing comments in response to a picture, or something like that. And then in 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade, starting to get into paragraphs. And the thing with paragraphs is making sure that it's a well-structured paragraph. For example, making sure they learn a topic sentence, an introductory sentence, a concluding sentence, and knowing about supporting statements, and just being able to identify those different parts of a paragraph is important, I think, around the early, 10, 11, 12 years and so on. And then we start to get into essays, couple of paragraphs long, maybe 7th, 8th grade or so, they can write longer papers. I think and then there's different types of of papers to write as well that you need to expose them to. But one thing that's really important is that they learn about thesis statements, how to create those as they enter their teen years, that it needs to, what it needs to, a statement that it proves something, and then that they're able to structure their writing following that, have main ideas and outline it and have a strong introduction and conclusion as they move forward. And into high school, into like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grades, hopefully they start to do more research or look into outside sources and read other things and maybe quote extra sources as well and incorporate that into their written reports. Now, sometimes, depending on a book review, you can there's a wide variety of rubrics. It can be several pages long once they get into high school, like maybe like several pages, like 2 or 3 pages type or longer. I would suggest that whatever assignment that you take or undertake to do, that there's a structure to it, like a scoring tool or a rubric, as I say, that says what it should have in it, so that they're able to follow that. But I think multi-page items, products are good by the time they're seniors in high school. They need to do that, and it's just, I think you've got to help see where your kid's at. It's not, there's no set, clear, right or wrong way, to do it. It's they don't have to be writing 10-page papers by the time they're a senior in high school. Some do, some don't. It really depends on your kid and what they want to do. But maybe at least a 2 to 3 page paper typed, something like that, I think would be good to be able to graduate with that.
No, I
thought that any helpful?
That was very helpful, because I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking, did anybody teach me this? Yeah, we all did essays in high school and in college, and I seriously don't remember anybody sitting me down and actually going through these steps, like, here's your thesis statement, here's how you teaching you how to support it. Where I grew up, it was kind of like, not really trial by fire, but maybe that's what it was. It was like either you were a good writer or you weren't. I didn't get a lot of coaching or support, but maybe that's because it came inherently and it was easy. Does that make sense? What about you,
Yes.
other ladies?
I think, Dianna, one of the main things that I was lacking the same thing, when I was growing up. I didn't remember anybody teaching me how to write. It's just that it kind of came naturally as I got into my teen years, because it's something that I love to do. But one of the reasons for that is that if you look at most public school curriculum, the grammar and writing curriculum is very product focused. It'll say, especially the younger years, it'll say, write a few sentences about this, or write a paragraph about that, or write a thank you letter, or write this, or write that. It's very product focused. And it really, because according to state tests, they realized that kids were struggling with writing. And so instead of working on the skills that were needed in curriculum that is used in public and private schools, it's very product focused, where they started shoving products into earlier and earlier years instead of focusing on this skill in the process of teaching a kid how to write.
I think that that's a really important point to make, Kirsten. It's kind of like math. There are building blocks, and maybe for some people the math building blocks are a little clearer than the writing building blocks, but there are definitely writing building blocks. And I know that my daughter is taking Lily's writing class right now, and one of the really important things that I love is that she breaks it down into steps, so that my daughter, who is a freshman in high school, has done some writing, and but it's really nice to have it broken down and explained and examples given. Every time Lily gives us a step, she allows the kids, there's examples to click on to get an example of what a good one would look like, whatever it is that they're working on. And I think that's really important to use those building blocks, just like you would with math, which everybody, is so familiar with, but maybe not so much with writing, is that, you need those tools before you can produce your product.
Well, thank you very much, Heidi. And I have to agree with what Kirsten and Dianna said as well, is that I never got taught how to write in school. I didn't even know what a thesis statement was for the longest time, but I know I'd get marked down. Even in college, my papers would get marked down because they were missing some things, and I didn't even really, even then, fully understand what it was. Now I do. I try to inject that in my courses so kids, everybody knows what they're supposed to do when they're asked to write some specific kind of thing. So there you go.
I also created basic checklists for my daughter, just so that when she went through her writing, I'd have her walk away from it for a day or two. So do whatever the writing assignment is, and then walk away from it. And then I created a basic checklist of things like introductions and things that might be in an introduction or a conclusion, checking certain points of grammar. I found that when she had the chance to go back and freshly look at her own paper with some specific, there goes my camera, sorry, with some specific ideas in mind, then she was more able to critically look at her own paper instead of me looking at it and maybe taking a red pen and going at it. For her, it was empowering to say, okay, I can look at this with a fresh eye and a checklist of some things to check off, and I can kind of evaluate this myself and make improvements.
Like Heidi, I might pipe into that. I think that's really helpful, and also it's really important for kids and young adults or teenagers to learn how to go back and edit their own work, like their editing skills. It's really important because when they're older and out and working, you want to make sure that their finished product that they give to their supervisor or their professor in college or something like that, that is as perfect as it possibly can be. So it's important that they learn how to correct their own mistakes. So having a scoring tool like that helps a lot.
And today I have that shared on my own personal blog over at startsatat.com. Today is the nonfiction list that I use with my daughter, and I will also be producing and putting up the fiction list as well that we use for her to evaluate and try and correct some of her own things in her own papers.
But one of the biggest mistakes people make, I know Lily will agree with me on this, is that people jump to that editing and proofreading stage way too early. And I mean this, moms. We do this as teaching our kids writing. Instead of letting them just get all their ideas on paper in a really messy, crazy, spelled wrong, grammatically wrong, punctuation crazy way, we start panicking over, this word starts with a W-H and not a W, and we start feeling like a failure. How do you not know how to spell where? Little things like that, and that's ridiculous, and it inhibits their creativity, and it inhibits their vocabulary, it inhibits their thinking. And so absolutely, I'm totally with you on the editing and proofreading, but it has to come way down later in the process. And I think that's so hard for us moms because we focus in on those little things instead of focusing on the big ideas. And we have to first look at the big ideas in the paper and think about, wow, this is a great point, or this is very logical, or you ordered this very well, or wow, these words you chose are just perfect. And really focusing on the ideas. And for me, I think writing is all about thinking. I mean, really the hardest part of writing is the thinking and the coming with the ideas and organizing the ideas. And I'm a huge fan of graphic organizers. My daughter has also taken some of Lily's courses, and I know she encourages the kids to use graphic organizers and clustering and different pre-writing techniques to help them organize their ideas, because most of our kids have lots of ideas, but it's sometimes getting them in a logical and orderly way that's the problem. And once you get them orderly, then you can go back and use the editing checklists and making sure the grammar and all that stuff is right. So I just wanted to just clarify that for everybody, that comes way at the end, the editing and proofreading.
I'm going to get somebody to, can we explain, because please don't laugh at me. I know what a rubric is, but I didn't know what a rubric was until my daughter was in the 7th grade. So if we can explain things like, what's a rubric and what in the world is a graphic organizer, but I see it all over the place, so I know, I don't know what it is. Can you explain that?
Can I pipe in? Well, there's a site that you can go to called rubrics.com. It's rubric, I think, or with an S on the, I'm not sure, .com. Anyway, but a rubric is like a chart. Okay, and it's like a little I always like to say Matrix because I'm a fan of the movies, the Matrix movies. But so there's like rows and columns, and like across the top, across the top row, it might say like how well they did in each particular category, and then on the up and down part, on the left-hand side of the rubric, it might have something like used supporting arguments or has a thesis statement or something like the checklist sort of thing that list. And then so you can see not whether or not just checking off whether or not they did it, but how well they did it, or if there's a little piece of it missing. And that's and then if you want to assign grades later, like one where they did everything just right, it's like the A+, and so on. It changed across the top. So that's what a rubric is. And then the site, rubric.com, it has tons of sample rubrics that you can look at and just see what some of them look like for different subjects or different types of assignments and give you a clearer idea. And then graphic organizers are just like little charts. I think they call them printables or no. I think y'all in homeschooling they're also known as printables, like with little squares and boxes and things, and you fill in information and stuff. And some of them can be like a sequence chain, like a float. What happened first? What happened second? What happened third? Or they can be like little bubbles, groups of bubbles with a center idea in the middle, and then like little spider like things come out, and there's other circles. I'm so sorry, I'm not explaining this very well. I'm saying it in a silly way, but that's all. There's lots of them. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now. Let somebody else pipe in. Go.
I actually love those charts that you're talking about. They're really helpful. I mean, I know one place where I get mine is education.com, and they have a ton of printables there where if your son or daughter is writing their own story, they can separate, or if you've just read a story out loud and you want them to separate the pieces of the story, it can talk about characters and theme and plot line. Or if they're writing their own story, it can just say beginning, middle, or problem, and then how it was resolved or the end. Those are really helpful.
And that's what graphic organizers are. They're all those different sorts of things like that, where you just break it up and put it in little boxes and things, and then later you throw it into like a paragraph if you get there.
Right.
But the thing is, it doesn't have to be from beginning to end. It doesn't have to be the finished product with all the paragraphs and editing right. That doesn't happen in a day or necessarily in a week. That can be like a several weeks long process or a month-long process. You don't have to feel like they have to have it all perfect quickly or soon.
Yeah, that's good. It breaks it into bite-sized pieces, makes it more achievable. I like that. I love those graphic organizers, though. We use those. It really helps, I think, not make it feel so overwhelming. Like if you said, okay, we're going to write a story about, the cat who, I don't know, went to the store, because there's some really weird writing prompts in some of the curriculum that is out there. What did the clown say to the bird? Well, I don't know. But I think when you're writing from scratch, just trying to generate that idea but also organize your thoughts, I think those rubrics and those charts really help to break it into achievable pieces.
Yeah, and it helps you be objective too, with if you have a number of kids, and if you're used to their different habits, if you have the rubric, it just helps you stay objective. Like if you're used to one of your children making a certain type of mistake, you might zero in on that and overlook it with the other one when you're not realizing it, and it's very helpful that way sometimes. But yeah, in elementary school, all those different sorts of graphic organizers, they might have pretty pictures around them and things. But then in high school, we use the exact same things in high school, but they just don't have all the pictures and cartoon things. But it's the exact same thing, I think. So
I'm going to take a break here for a minute and let's see. I'm going to check with Marlene to see if we have comments or questions from the event room. Folks, things to share from folks over there.
Yeah, we actually have quite a few things here. Let me start pulling them up. Renee says, my son thinks it takes too much time to write what is in his head, so we use typing and computer accessibility settings so he can talk into Word, then he has to print and self-edit. Heather Woody says, I like to take the coaching approach. The goal is to have an effective written communicator. Meet them where they are and give them the tools and coaching to get them over to the goal.
We need to star that one for later. That's a great approach, not just with writing, but with so many aspects of our homeschool.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Tony Anderson said that, she said, we switched to erasable pens for a few of our children. The work of keeping the pressure on the pencil was too hard for them, and they couldn't focus on writing. It's a really good tip. Leanne Warren also said something similar. She says, we use dry erase markers with my son because it helps him to realize it's not a permanent mistake. Dealing with his perfectionism and not spelling words perfectly the first time. That's awesome. Renee also says, Renee Brown, proofreading practice is great for helping kids to discover proper technique. My son loves proofreading a sentence a day, and that has made him more willing to edit his own work. Heather Grootman, she says, when I worked with special needs kids, we used checklists all of the time for writing. Very helpful for visual writers and for kids who had trouble reading a long list. I made a picture checklist for them to use. And then we have a question here that was left before the Hangout. And it's from Kristen Beasley Osborne. She says, I've bribed my child to work on handwriting. I've offered rewards to get grammar pages completed. I have reached my own boiling point to where I've had to walk out of the room. I cannot figure out if my child is extremely lacking motivation or is just frustrated. I need a new perspective on how to help my child get inspired to do the work. If not, at least be able to come to the learning table with a willing attitude. How do I help her have a better attitude? How do we make it easier to learn handwriting and grammar topics? I know this is a tall order, but I'm hoping to learn so I can teach. Thank you for your program. I so look forward to this learning experience.
I think Kirsten, the commenter there, is a little confused about what writing is because she used two words that shouldn't even be talked about, and that's handwriting and grammar. That's not even what you need to focus on in the beginning, and I think that's why the kid is rebelling. And I think if you ask your kid to write or just talk to you about something that the child's passionate about, he's going to be motivated. I mean, I know some boys, and they go through this phase where every essay they write is about Legos or some video game that they love, and the parent's like, you know what, if you can write a well-structured, well-reasoned paper about Minecraft 5 times in a year, okay, fine. My daughter went through the cat phase where everything was about cats. I mean, everything. The differences in different kind of breeds and how to treat a cat and cats from history, and I just went with it. A lot of parents would be panicked. You can't write about cats all year long. Why not? It's about the writing. It's not about the topic. So ask your child or find out, what your child's passionate about, and let your child research that or expound on that, and just let your child have fun. If you're pounding them with handwriting and grammar, they're not going to think it's fun.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say just maybe have them journal a few times a week or something, but with no grammar, so on, just about whatever they want to write about. And then have them share their ideas with you if you can get them to do that, and then discuss it. So that validates what they've written, that tells them that their idea is a good idea, a reasonable one. It helps them build up their confidence, and eventually, hopefully, diminishes the hatred of the experience around writing. But yeah, I would suggest that.
I don't know if we have any parents with kids who like to draw. I know one way to make the process easier is writing can also be expressed through drawing, actually. You know, because you're expressing an idea. And that's what a lot of writing is about, is expressing an idea. My son loves to doodle and draw. And we mentioned the journals. And using a journal and writing, even if it isn't words, just let them draw it. Let them get the idea out as a picture. You can always come back around later and add a few sentences. But my son went through a stage where he loves Sonic. You know, and everything was Sonic, and he knew all the characters, and he would just draw elaborate drawings in his journal, and they were colorful, and they were great, and I'm like, this is awesome, and there was a story to go with it, too. There was a storyline, and I'm like, he is writing, and even though it was only pictures, it was a story, and we could come back around later, and he could tell me his story. And you can always add the words later. I wouldn't, you know, I like what Jimmie said. Don't stress the grammar and all of that stuff right away. Let them get their thoughts out.
I agree. I'm hearing so many good thoughts from you guys on the panel, and great stuff coming from the event room as well. What about what do we have advice to people who feel like they can't teach writing because they're not good writers themselves? Most of us here on the panel, I'm going to kind of lump us all in together. I'd say we're pretty decent writers because we do it quite a bit, some of us for a living. But for folks that aren't comfortable with writing, or don't, like I said, don't feel like they do a good job at writing, what's your advice to those parents who think there's no way I can do this because it doesn't come easy for me? How in the world can I teach it to somebody else?
Can I pipe it? Well, I'm sorry, I have to pipe in. Take one of my classes. Sorry, I'll be quiet. If your child's in middle or high school, then come take one of my classes. I have some short courses. They're really inexpensive, and one of the moms that took them once said it was like a good little refresher course for her too, so she was able to, you know, refresh herself on some of those things and needed in an essay and things. And there's lots of downloadables too that you can keep. So, okay, that's it. I'll be quiet now. Go ahead.
No, that was a great point, because when I was looking over some of the descriptions, because I'll ask you to give us just a short little description. Some of the things I was like, could I write a persuasive paper now? I don't know. So yeah, that would be great for folks who like are a little far removed from high school and college, who are kind of out of the practice of these things. Essays, quoting sources. I would not have any idea how to do that anymore. I mean, well, it's been a long time since we looked at that. Oh my gosh, what's that little book that? The little book we have to quote, ALA, like S, whatever, the thing where you have to quote things according to that, and that's what we did back in school 8 million years ago, when there wasn't the internet.
Well, there's a site, I know, and the rules change too in the meantime, but there's a site now called easybib.com. Have you ever heard? My high schoolers use that. Have you all heard of that? It's EASYBIB.com, and you can pretty much just throw in your site, and it comes up with the citation for you. Might go there and check it out. But anyway.
Yeah, that's a good one. My husband is going to school for his master's right now, and he showed me that site, and I couldn't. It was really cool. It's really helpful. Makes it easy to write a bibliography.
Oh yes, and it's so annoying because there's so many different. I went to different school, and so one school, one professor would require one particular style of that, and another one another. It was so aggravating, but. But in any case, I'm starting to develop my next series is a research paper, Rockstar, so I'm going to be working on that stuff, and also on how to judge, find good sources on the internet and judge their credibility too, because that's important for kids to know and get some ideas on how, when they're older and doing research on their own on the internet, what to trust, what they're reading, and when not to. Or to question it and so on. But That's another thing. But some of those essay forms, I know, Dianna, don't be embarrassed about that, because if you haven't done it in a few years, you know, of course, you're not going to remember. But
No, even thinking about going back to school, like that's a big push for us as nurses. I'm a nurse. It's my day job. I'm a registered nurse. But that's a big push is for us to go back to school to get a bachelor's degree if you don't have one. I don't have one. I might get fired for saying this. I don't plan to go back to school because my spare time and effort and money is better spent teaching my children right now. That's all the time and energy that I have is for them. But looking at these courses that Lily has to offer, these essay rockstar courses, that would be how if I were to choose to go back to school. This is great for adults. It's great for middle school, high schoolers. There's personal statements. That's like your college applications. Tell me about yourself. What would you like? Yeah, because that's like the hardest thing ever. Unless you're just really comfortable with tooting your own horn, which I don't think a lot of us are.
No.
Persuasive essays, I don't think a lot of us get into that with our writing. I do occasionally. There's expository essays, textual analysis. There's like great short bite courses that you can take a look at. And I love what Heidi said. Where are you in the Fortuitants schedule? Like what did your daughter take? I caught her off guard.
Yeah, it took me a minute to unmute. Sorry. No, my daughter Chloe is on. She finished her personal statement, and she is on her persuasive now that she's just starting.
And remind me again, she's early high school or?
Yep, she's a freshman in high school this year. So, you know, it was actually perfect timing for her to take a stab at some of these essays. We started writing a little bit, I would say, later with her. She was a frustrated writer early on, and I actually set it aside, any sort of formal writing at all, for probably more than a year when she was younger, because it just was such a frustration. And which isn't typical for me, right, Dianna? Everybody that knows me, I have a little type A going on. But we set it aside, and she came back to writing like 7th, 8th grade, doing some more formal writing. And Lily's course is really, like I said, I really like, taking her through the steps, one thing at a time with each of these different types of essays that she's learning to write. It makes it bite-sized. It makes her able to kind of focus on one thing at a time. And so, yeah, she's on her persuasive essay. She just started it today.
Well, do you think it would be all right? Should I pipe in and talk about some of these, what these steps are, or what the different essays are? Just give me a nod. Okay. Okay, well, I guess I'll start with the 4 different essays. The personal statement is the one, where kids, for college applications, they're always asked this really elaborate question, which basically says, tell us about yourself. And people are uncomfortable talking about themselves, especially when it's to a stranger, an impersonal stranger. So the personal statement essay just helps kids get through that and learn how to write a personal narrative. The persuasive essay, that's usually the type of essay that's found on the college entrance exams, on the writing portion. And it asks you to take a position either in agreement with or against a particular statement, or in disagreement to a particular statement. And what happens is where a lot of kids mess up is that they kind of take both sides of the fence. They do both sides. And that's where they get a lot of points lost on that section of those exams. So in the persuasive essay, I really make them stick to one position. Even though we talk about it in the beginning, you got to take one stand, they still want to waffle and go back and forth a little bit, and we just help them stay, keep that one firm position and not be afraid to go ahead and take a stand on that one position.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
about the whole straddling the fence?
Yeah.
Do you think it's because they don't feel strongly about one point or the other, or is it just I don't know what to do kind of thing?
A little bit. Maybe they don't feel stronger, or maybe they don't really know that, like in the persuasive essay, they really just have to take one. They don't really have that ingrained. They just have to take one position. one or the other. And because then it becomes, if it's both, straddle both sides of the fence and just give a general overview to explain and inform or respond to a prompt or a question or talk about a subject, that's an expository essay. An expository essay is just this wide range of different, all of these essay types can be an expository essay, but it's mostly that purpose is to explain or inform about something so that somebody really understands about a particular topic. And then the textual analysis, that's a little tricky one. That's that one that requires a lot of critical thinking, because that's where kids are asked to write a review of somebody else's work, like write a movie review or a book review or a review of anything. Sometimes a review of a video game is one of our essay examples in the course, where they decide if the creator of the thing they're reviewing achieved their purpose, or achieved what they decide what the purpose was of it, and if the person who created it achieved that purpose. And then they do critical thinking and look at the item they're reviewing and decide, or get evidence and decide if they succeeded or not, and just share their opinion there. And then in the end, what's also we work on is always adding in their own thoughts, what their conclusions are. A lot of times kids leave that off at the end, and that's an important piece too, to share what they really think about it all. The 5-step process that Heidi's referred to is it's just a 5-step writing process where we first do brainstorming together. The second is where they organize their ideas, maybe in those thought bubbles that we talked about before. The third step is called free writing, where that's where they first start writing out sentences and thoughts, not till the third of the 5 steps. And that's still no grammar or punctuation or anything there as well. And then in the 4th step, we start revisions, where we just do a sort of a general organization, make sure each paragraph has a topic sentence, make sure there's a thesis statement, create an introduction and conclusion. And then in the 5th step, editing, that's where we go over line by line and really look at all of those little grammatical error details and look for sentence structure, punctuation, and so on. Not till the very end. So there you go. That's it. So those are the 4 different essay types in the 5-step process we do for every single essay. And yeah, so it takes some time, but from beginning to end, they learn the process, and I think it goes faster as they get better at it. They can just go through it more quickly. So, the whole Essay Rockstar class, with the 4 essays all combined, that's a semester-long course, really. But the little ones, are just the little modules that are just one of the types of papers. Those are maybe 4 or 5 weeks, or however long people want to take to do it.
Well, I love the idea of building blocks. We do a classical education, and I know that our math moves very slow, as opposed to some of the other programs that like some of my friends are using. Because as a homeschooling mother, of course, you talk to your friends and how to find out what everybody else is using, and then go home and cry because your kid's not doing skip counting when everybody else is, and so on and so forth. But not me. But yeah, the building, yes, it's going to take a little bit longer to lay that foundation and build the blocks up. But then once you've got it and you've got that down and you understand the process, then it becomes easier and more rote the next time around. So I love that approach, because that's, like I said, that's what we're doing here now, and that's what we're used to, and it works well for me. So far, it's worked well for all the kids, because I don't know, it helps my confidence level as a teacher, and it helps them as well. So I love that approach. I think it's great. What about, to wrap this up, and we've had so much fun, I could sit here and listen to Lily talk about writing because I like to write, so I like to sit here and listen to her talk about writing things. What would be, like, we're going to wrap up with like a what not to do. What's the number one thing that you can do to destroy your kids' love of writing? I think we've already kind of touched on it. And confidence. So let's talk about the big pitfall to avoid, so that we don't all chase our kids away from the learning table, running, crying and screaming. So, what's your number one takeaway? Like what not to do? I'm gonna call on Heidi first.
You always do that to me. You like to put me on the spot first. um, I number one way to chase your kid away from the table is to nitpick, nitpick, nitpick. And I am a nitpicker by nature. So yeah, don't spit your drink out. But I am a nitpicker by nature, so that is something that has been difficult for me. And the oldest always gets that learning process from their parents, so she's my guinea pig. But like I said, the best thing I did do was step back with her and stop pushing, and just let her take a break from it, because I think I had nitpicked her to death. And so I think number one, don't nitpick. Let them get their ideas out. It's not going to be perfect, but there's plenty of time. Like Lily said, how many years do we spend teaching our kids to write? There's plenty of time to get in all of the technical details. Just for them to get the ideas out in the first place is so important.
Great job. Excellent. Jimmie or Kirsten, do you guys have anything else to add in?
I would say I agree that that's the number one thing, is being too critical, but another thing would be assigning topics and maybe sticking too closely to a curriculum as far as the topics. If that topic doesn't resonate with a child, they're not going to be able to write about it. And yes, there are times when a child does have to write on demand with a given topic, but it's usually, even in the academic world, you have a range of topics that you can write about. So when at all possible, give your children ownership and let them make decisions about the topic, at least where they're going to go or their slant with the topic.
That's awesome. And that, that's another reason why I love these Hangouts. I learned so much from our panel guests, our special guests, our folks in the event room. Kirsten, what about you?
I'll kind of piggyback what Jimmie's saying. I think as far as topics, it's really hard when our kids are young to generate an idea from scratch, and to just kind of take the pressure off of them so that they don't feel like they have to, develop this product from scratch. I think to follow what their interests are. Or if you've just read a book, a lot of our creative writing assignments, which at our age is just 2 or 3 sentences, is piggybacked off of the book that we just read. Like, say, we just read Mr. Popper's Penguins. One of our creative writing assignments was, if somebody gave you an animal, what would that animal be, and what would happen? What would be your adventure? And so they're already having a basis for an idea. They don't have the pressure of coming up with something from scratch. I think that if we can give our kids a good basis by taking the pressure off of them and at least giving them an idea to start with, it helps the process along, especially when it's something fun.
Excellent. Lily, do you have any closing remarks for us before I do a last roundup here?
Oh, well, let's see. I'd say, you still have to, you can't, when they're older, you still have to get on them with the editing when it comes to that. You can't let it go. You can't let it slip between the cracks. So I try to follow this ratio. I'd like either 2 to 1 or 3 to 1, 2 positive things to 1, thing we need to work on. Something like that. Always try to give balanced feedback and keep the tone of it light and pleasant. Like, this is really good about your essay. I love this. Be specific in the feedback, and then say, here's something we need to work on here. Like, for example, your conjunction, we've got some work on conjunctions, and then just quickly list all of the areas where they need to do that. But just try to balance the feedback, just so that they feel like they're still succeeding and open to taking in the correction. Because if they get too defensive, they'll shut down, and then nobody wins that way. So you can't let them get to that place. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you for all your advice. I just throw in, just relax. relax and don't compare, because that's always the killer in my homeschool, is that I'm comparing to everybody else around me. So need to stop doing that. I have had a wonderful afternoon with all of these ladies. Want to remind you once again that we are here each and every Thursday. You can find us here on Google+. You can find us on YouTube if you do a search for iHomeschool Network. You can find us on iTunes and on Stitcher for those of you who have Android devices. We did not leave you out. Don't you worry. So podcasts are uploaded. I think we have 10 or 12 there currently, I think. There's enough to get you started. Don't worry. You can get started and start listening. That way you can take them with you to the gym and listen to me chat with my friends while you work out on the treadmill or while you're cooking dinner or doing laundry. That was a new venture for us that we're super excited about. So like I said, Google Plus, YouTube, podcasting every Thursday. Some of our upcoming topics are exciting. We're going to talk about teaching with technology, some co-ops, bringing dads into our homeschool. So we got some great stuff coming up. Also want to check out iHomeschoolNetwork.com/hangouts. That's where you'll find the list of topics and upcoming events. Many, many thanks. Special thanks to Fortuitants today and Lily. You can find her on Google+. And you're on YouTube as well, yes, I think.
I do. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. What I've been doing a series of writing tips on the YouTube channel. So it's at my name or at Fortuitants.
Excellent. If you're watching here on Google, I want you to circle everybody on the panel too, because that way you can keep track with all of us. Thank you very much once again to Heidi. You can find her at starts8.com. Jimmie Lanley is easy to find at jimmielanley.com. Start there, and then you can find all of her other networks. Kirsten, I'm so sorry. Kirsten can be found at kirstenjoyawake.com. Yes? No, she's not. Yes, I'm right on that one.
You got it. That's correct.
Lily is at fortuagents.com. Marlene is at diligent.heart.com. And I'm at thekennedyadventures.com when I'm not working with iHomeschool Network. So thank you so much once again, and then we'll see you back here again next Thursday. Thanks for spending your afternoon with us. Bye-bye.